In this episode, I bring back Julius Fortuna, a guest from episode 116. Julius is a North American big game guide and veteran of over 2 dozen African safaris. On top of all that, he's also a certified firearms instructor and a competitive three-gun shooter. Julius has spent decades. He's studied the psychological divide kind of between hunters who tend to freeze in situations and those that perform under that pressure. In this episode, Julius delivers his A to Z training system to prep pretty much any hunter from beginner to veteran for Africa. It's a great breakdown on rifle setup, stress tested shooting drills, advanced dry fire manipulation, and all kinds of things. We discuss mental imagery and situational awareness around training that is built specifically for high stake situations. So, this is going to be an episode that I know a lot of hunters are going to find great value in, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Yeah, so welcome back to another episode of Round the Fire, Julius. It's absolutely fantastic to have you back on. Man, it feels like we spoke yesterday, but when I went to go and check what number episode you were, it's been quite a while back. Good to see you again, man.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on a topic that I'm very passionate about, and I look forward to a good chat.
Yeah, I really enjoyed our last episode. For anybody that hasn't caught it, it's episode 116. So I highly suggest you guys kind of go back, listen to that one first, because that was fantastic. Julia shared some incredible stories with us. And then there was kind of a few things that we touched on in that episode, which we then later chatted about on the phone afterwards. And that's probably going to be our main topic for today. And one of the reasons why I'm really happy and excited to have you back on, because you can obviously share a lot of your experience. I've said in the past, I was just a simple, humble plains game PH in the Eastern Cape. I didn't quite venture out into the big, dangerous game sides, but you have got some incredible experiences that you've hunted with some fantastic PHs. And that's why I thought it's incredible if you share this knowledge with the actual, the pre-safari preparation. But we're not just going to be talking about have you packed enough socks and have you got this t-shirt and all that type of stuff. We're really going to dive a lot more into it. The mental side, the preparation, and knowing all this stuff. I'm going to leave it up to you. Like I said, you're the one that's a lot of experience. But yeah, man, again, thank you very much for coming back and doing this. I'm certainly excited.
Thanks, brother. And I tell you, that is something you said to me on our first podcast, and you said, "Hey, the safaris don't begin in Johannesburg, right? They don't begin in Harare. They begin at the range." And I started thinking about that, and I thought, well, there's a checklist that I go through, over 25, 28 safaris. I've kind of narrowed down the strategy at which so many people have asked that question, and I'm looking forward to being able to dive in. It's really a pre-hunt checklist. It's not just it's not just dangerous game, although I would say the rewards have maybe a little bit more life's needs in the dangerous game side, and that doesn't matter if it's any of the dangerous seven. They're all dangerous for a reason. They're called that. But this is really just about getting to Africa and getting there and having the most effective and efficient and safe hunt that you could have in Africa. Because one of the things that we both know is that Africa is extremely brutal on the unprepared,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
especially with dangerous game. And it rewards preparation. It rewards mental discipline. It rewards situational awareness. And maybe the last one is the most important. So we'll try to cover them all, but we're going to start right at the beginning because we got an hour. So let's go through the whole thing, and let's start with your rifle setup. Sure. And I am not here to talk about, who likes a 375, who 416. That's you can leave that for other people, because that's it spins around and it gets
Yes.
cognitive dissident, and I don't even like to go there, but I want to talk about the setup in general, and that is making sure that your scope, making sure that your bases and your rings are done effectively and efficiently, because literally that train of heading to Africa and that whole process on the plane and everything else is critically important. So when you're making that decision, you've made your decision, you've got your caliber. Most important thing then is ammunition and scope. I see so many people coming to Africa with 4 to 25s and 10 to 35, all these long range setups that absolutely are useless in Africa.
Mm.
Period. For 98% of everything that you're going to do, and again, I'm preaching to the choir, this on Plains game, you do not need that. Most of the shots are under 300 yards, and really a good 3 to 9, a good 3 to
Yep.
10, a good on the max side, a 4 to 12 or a 4 to 15. That's all you need. And I'm pretty passionate about that, because what I've seen many times is when people come up in a gun, and when I was guiding, it was the same thing with elk and mule deer that come up at 150 yards and they can't find the animal.
Yep.
They're either cranked up, or they're already starting at with a field of view that's only 20, 30 feet at 100 yards. So they're looking at this tunnel, and it really becomes a challenge for the PH to make sure they're on the game. So just start off with, you just need a low power variable scope, and the scope world is very simple. You get what you pay for.
Sure.
It's just that simple. If you want to get a Minox, you want to get one of these low end scopes, even the Vortex. I've been selling optics for 40 years. They just don't have the type of quality that used to happen with that scope before. You really need the higher end scopes, the Leupolds, the Swarovskis, the Collis, the Schmidt and Benders. You just get the European quality, and you're going to have a much better experience, and you're going to have a much bigger field of view,
Hmm.
which is only going to happen on the high end scopes. There's a lot of geometry that goes into optics, and you just can't put that geometry together, the lining up of prisms and the lenses, for a scope that costs $200 or $300. It
Yeah.
just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on the scope?
No, no, I was going to say it's a fantastic point, just to kind of come back to the magnification. And I don't know how many times, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of PHs that are going to nod with me when I say this, but I don't know how many times I've reached over across and actually just turned down the zoom on the scope, because a lot of the times you you're not necessarily right there ready to shoot the animal. Sometimes you got to find the animal. And as a PH, I'm looking through binoculars and I'm saying, okay, can you see that aloe? It's just to the left of an aloe. There's a white rock come down. And you know that the client hasn't found it. And you're kind of thinking, but what more do I need to say? And you look across, and that scope is cranked up so high that they don't see the bigger picture, like you said. So a lot of those times, and again, a fantastic point with a good quality scope, but also knowing how to work that scope. You don't want to be lifting your head, looking and trying to do it on the range. Just give it a good twist and learn, so when you're on the sticks and you steady, if you do want to crank it back up or back down, whatever it may be, it's just got to be second nature. So yeah, I really like that. Scope is a fantastic point.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the other thing about scope. If you're going to look at one thing, you look at field of view.
Yep.
Field of view at 100 tells you everything. If you have field of view of less than 30 or 40 feet at 100 yards, you're going to be putting yourself at a disadvantage. The higher end scopes will have, and I mean the higher end various 6 Leupolds, the Swarovskis, the Collis, the Schmidt and Benders, they'll have 100 feet field of view. So even if you're cranked up and you're on 6x or 4 or 8x or even 10x, you're still going to have such a
Yeah.
big field of view that when things happen up in front of you and you're in the gun, you're seeing everything unfold in front of you and not just a tunnel. It's the one area that I just hope people, if they take away nothing else on that, pay attention on the scope. You get what you pay for on that. I would rather have a $700, Winchester 375 and have a $2,500 Swarovski, a ZX, 1 to 8, anytime than having an $8,000 custom gun.
No, I like that. It's a good point, definitely.
And I'll finish off on the scopes on an important area. And I sent you a picture about tracking and the importance of the box test. When
Yep.
you're, especially for dangerous game, if you're not testing the elevator and the erector system in your scope, you're making a huge mistake.
Mhm.
Most of the Variax 2s, Variax 3s, they have, and actually most of the scopes under $1,000 have rubber O-rings, and they have modified leaf springs. You put the screw in here and the leaf spring goes like this.
Right.
You're always taught you gotta tap it at the end, right? Tap, tap,
Yep.
tap.
Yep.
It's because one leaf spring goes up, one goes down. And if that switches on the flight over there, you're 8 inches off, 8, 9 inches off. So it's so easy to do a box test. You get at 100 yards and you go, okay, here's my group. I'm dead on at 100. I go 4 inches up, not 1 inch, 2 inch, 4 inches up, shoot a group or shoot one round, two
Mhm.
rounds, and then move 4 inches over, move 4 inches back, and move 4 inches over. You just literally take make a box out of it. If
Yep.
your scope tracks, and you'll see I sent you some pictures on it. If it tracks, it's going to move straight up 4 inches. It's going to move, or basically 3.5 to 4 inches, and
Mhm.
it's going to print another group. I cannot tell you. I would say one out of 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 of the older loopholes will not hold their point of impact, and
Mhm.
especially if the erector system is cranked down. So
Sure.
you sight it in and you had to crank it a lot to get it up on there. That pressure on those two modified leaf springs will wear, and it eventually will give. And if it happens on a charging buffalo, it could mean the difference between life and death.
Yeah, because that's where the inches really count for sure.
Yeah. So just a simple test on the scopes, and again, just make sure it's sighted in properly. You're not shooting past 350 yards. I've had friends say, should I sight 3.5 inches high at 100? And I'm like, absolutely not. Sight an inch and a half. You're fine. You get the max point blank out of your plains game rifle. If it's a dangerous game rifle, a big bore, it again, dead on at 100 is probably all you need. Is that kind of what you found?
Yeah, yeah. I was going to say I agree with you there. A lot of the times people can overthink it too, and you just want to try and keep it as simple as possible, and talk to your PH beforehand too. This was another thing that I found quite interesting with a lot of the guys is that they'll kind of bring over their own rifles, their own scopes, whatever it may be, which is perfectly fine. But then kind of relay that information to your PH. Let him know how it's shooting. Let him know what you've dialed in, what you've come to with. Because as we said, those couple of inches make a big difference, and it just helps for your PH to know those types of things too. So yeah, I agree with everything you said.
Yeah. Uh, so let's talk about the actual field practice, because I see, I would say 50% of all the people I know will go there and they'll only shoot off the bench. Maybe they shoot 1 or 2 rounds on the sticks. Man, is it needs to be opposite of that.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and I'll tell you, with the big bores, especially, the importance of using a lead sled. Use a lead sled when you sight in. You're not trying to figure out if you're grouping well or how good of a shot you are. You're trying to determine if that base and those rings and that setup, or even on a double with shooting a red dot, if that stuff is set up correctly. And you're better off doing that in a sled and take the human element out.
Hmm.
And once you're sighted in, stop with the bench. Just
Yep.
leave the bench alone and go strictly to your sticks, go strictly to field position, offhand. Another thing I just see, the only practice from sticks. No, you got to do kind of 50-50 so you can have that ability if something jumps up at 20 yards to get on the gun and take them out, because you may not be in the sticks. You may not have the ability to get in the sticks.
Hmm. And also, one thing that I will say to a lot of people is your breathing too. When you're comfortable and calm and well rested at the range, you're going to be breathing nice and fine. But when you've hiked halfway up the top of a copy or something and it's hot, you sweating, you're breathing, you can hear your heart beating in your ears, type of stuff. Try and take a shot then and see the difference in it too. Now, I'm not saying you have to go around and, run a marathon and then head to the shooting range, but you kind of have to just try and be uncomfortable. And to be uncomfortable, you want to do it so that you are comfortable in those uncomfortable situations, which is difficult to sort of ruminate and do over again. But same type of thing. Don't just shoot standing. sit down. Maybe you're going to be in a prone
Yeah,
position. Maybe you have to have a rock. Find a branch and shoot off there. Because you never know when you're out in the bush. And I'm sure you have this type of experience too. You can't just say to the animal, hold up, let me just get ready. I'm not comfortable yet. It's going to happen. It's going to happen fast. And 90% of the times you're going to be uncomfortable. So you might as well
yeah,
practice being uncomfortable.
yeah. That's it. And I'll tell you another trick for me is I really, really insist that my friends use and buy the sticks, the shooting systems that they're going to bring to Africa.
That's
It's
good advice.
so
Yep.
many people will just get there and then now they're going to just use the pHs. And hey, for most stuff that will work. But even the difference between one pH having, a typical 3-pod versus another one that has the 4 sticks, because now you're learning while you're on the ground in Africa, and that's not the time to do it,
No.
you know. So
Yeah.
I'm a really big believer. You get your sticks, you do your practicing from here. You literally can do your dry firing from here, just getting the gun up, getting on it. These sticks go with me everywhere.
Hmm.
I literally fold them down, and to me they're as important as my rifle because I've gotten so used to them that I think you're making a mistake if you don't buy your sticks prior and put the time and effort into it.
Yeah. And when you do bring your own sticks, if you do bring your own sticks, give your pH 20 minutes, half an hour
Perfect.
to practice with your sticks too. A lot of the
Exactly.
times, everybody's different heights. I would always just encourage. I'm busy teaching my kids, shooting etiquette and practice and technique now. Stand up straight, lean forward, which means people are different heights. And I always remember that when I had my shooting sticks, sometimes I'd throw up the sticks and I'd be hunting with a short, tiny little woman, and I'll go, "Oh shit, sorry, my bad." You got to drop them down. But just give those sticks to your PH and say, "Just this is how I like them. Just try, just practice," so that he knows you're comfortable with them. Because, as you said, your sticks are an extension of your arm. I know when I was a PH with my sticks, oh man, I could throw them up anywhere, and that was just so comfortable for me. So yeah, just hand them over to your PH and say, "This is how I like it. This is the height," and then you guys are going to be good to go.
Yeah. And I will tell you that if you don't practice with your sticks and you just buy sticks to bring them there as like the shooting 4 rounds out of a box and that's all you're there, just use the pH of sticks
Sure.
because you're taking out one of the variables
Yep.
because the pH knows exactly how he's going to put his sticks up. If you're going to bring your own sticks, you damn sure better be practiced at it
Yeah.
and then let him be comfortable with it, especially the new like the new quad sticks. Some PHs, and I see more and more PHs using them because they're a lot more solid
Hmm.
when you get a rear rest on the gun. It's 50-60% more solid. So yeah, so just make sure if you're going to do it, you're going to bring it, you got to do that. And I will tell you along the line of the sticks is dry fire.
Yes.
I, Dry fire is becoming the new normal on pistol and combat stuff, and I shoot competitively, and it's people have been doing it for a long time, but you don't hear about it that much on safari, and that's a really big mistake because the dry fire, if you figure it out, maybe you get I don't know, maybe you get 50 rounds out of somebody that goes prepared, maybe
Mhm.
60 rounds. But man, you can dry fire 20, 30 rounds a day for 6 months before. And now your manipulation skills, how you're bolting, how you're feeding, all of that goes into this dry fire practice in a safe environment. And I'll show you how I do mine. So for my bolt gun, and by the way, the importance of dry firing is that you have dummy rounds or you have empties, move all the ammunition away,
Yes.
all the
Yes.
live ammunition away. So
Love that.
my practice, yeah, my practice belt is has empties, but but even this being able to just come up, put on the sticks, bolt around in, fire, fire, dry fire, and now reload from your belt. Click, click, back on the sticks again. You're off the sticks after the 3 shots. You're back on the sticks and you load up and do it again. It's so simple that if you just did that 20 times a day, just a manipulation drill, you're going to be so much better by the time. I mean, that's 700, 800 in essence, brain, focus, you're going to be
Yeah.
that much better, 800 times before you ever get there.
It's being comfortable in that uncomfortable situation, because when you are in that
Yeah.
uncomfortable situation, you don't want to be fumbling and fiddling and looking down and taking your eyes off what's really important. So the more
Yeah.
practice you put in, you do it. And I love the fact
Yeah.
that you actually kind of promoting dry firing, because I remember growing up as a kid, it was an absolute no-no. You know, the old school guys where you never dry fire, and if they find out you ever dry fired your rifle, you get a clip around the ear type of thing. But nowadays people are saying, but why? You know, now you've got to get into the practice of it. So again,
Yeah.
the more you do it, the more preparation is. You're training your body, your mind, your motor skills, your everything coming together just through practice and repetition.
Yeah. And on double rifles, the same thing with my doubles. So I have, a nickel plated, so I know they're empties and everything is safe. So I have
Good.
a very different, and then I'm marked on my actual dummy rounds that have, you know, um, ready to load on my second rounds on that. But having these and being able to jump on the sticks, and what I do with my doubles is I take 2 shots, I eject them, I come off the sticks,
Okay.
I
Yep.
reload, I'm off the sticks, and now I'm following up for my second shot and third shot. So again, it's just a matter of manipulation. I talked to Mike Fell, one of the top PHs on the planet,
Yeah.
and Mike said that he said something that was interesting to me. He says, I really watch my client when we're at the range, and I really watch him when we're in sticks. And I said, well, tell me about that. He said, well, most of what I do is dangerous game. And I need to figure out if my client's going to be able to handle it, handle the stress, handle himself in there. And I can tell in about 5 seconds, just the way he manipulates the action, whether or not this is going to be a potential I'm going to be shooting kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Incredible,
saying?
isn't it? Yep.
Yeah, because literally the most dangerous thing on safari is a nervous client with an express rifle right behind you. Maybe giving you another orifice.
And it's amazing the guys with as much experience as Mike, what they can pick up on by just watching and just looking a little bit in those couple of minutes. It's incredible. Uh, Also, which is one of the reasons why I always tell people is don't try and go and impress your PH. You know, don't try and say we're going to the range. Oh, look how tight I can shoot, or look how good I am at the rifle. Because a lot of the times those guys will sniff that type of BS out pretty quickly. They're not here to be impressed. They're here to just say, okay, what are your capabilities? So that when the hunt comes, I can make sure that we're in a good position for you, for your trip, for your animal, whatever it may be. So, uh, uh, if anybody ever received criticism from a PH, especially at the shooting range, it's not something you can take to heart. You got to understand that it's for the better. And I'm sure guys like Mike and everyone else would have said, listen, let's just try this, let's just try that, because they have that experience. So,
Right.
yeah, what these guys can see in a couple minutes is phenomenal. All right, guys, I'm going to interrupt this episode for just a quick minute because I got something cool to announce. As you can see over my shoulder, with this big thunderstorm rolling in, we've had some great rains out here in West Texas. And that usually means one thing: we're going to have a really good hunting season. I've been driving around, checking on the cattle, checking on the fencing, checking everything on the ranch, and I cannot get over how many deer we're seeing. And they are in incredible condition. The buck are ready in their velvet, and it is looking good. So, if you guys are like me, I've always thought it's never too early to plan for hunting season. We are running a little bit of a special at the moment here on the ranch. It is a buck and a doe combo for a weekend hunt. So that's Friday afternoon, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, and then Sunday morning. So if you are looking for a good, honest, traditional, low fence, West Texas whitetail hunt, then get in touch with me by my email, johnomcque@gmail.com. I'll send you all the details and you can come and hunt whitetail here on the ranch with me. We got everything. We got the blinds, we got the feeders. I personally prefer a little bit of walk and stalk hunting. So if you're looking to fill your freezer, or maybe you're looking to get the kiddos into hunting, maybe they can shoot their first doe or buck, this is the place to do it. We have only got a few limited spots available for the end of this year. So don't delay. Get in touch with me today and we'll try and put together a really cool West Texas whitetail hunt for you guys. Okay, let's get back to that episode. Cheers, guys.
And by doing 20 dry fires, and by the way, I've had on my bolt guns, I probably have 2,000 dry fires there. Again, they're falling on a primer, and now the new dummy rounds have a rubber primer pocket, so it's even easier on the firing
Okay.
pins.
Right.
I have 2,000 rounds. It's never affected my firing pins one bit. I probably have 1,000 on my doubles, never affected them whatsoever.
Good.
So the old school way is you really need to throw that out.
Yep.
Dry
Yep.
fire is, especially with dangerous game calibers, 375 and up, it's gonna be game changing to you and how you manipulate the gun. And let's face it, when the stress dumps in and cortisol hits your system, you're going to be only as good as what you've trained. You're going to be only good as what you've brought to your brain.
Yeah.
And if you've got 4 rounds through there, you gotta, you're in deep shit.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic advice. I'm enjoying this.
Yeah. So I say that's another really part of it. And again, from the belt in field positions. So that field positions also include what I like to do is load 1 round in a really
Hmm.
dangerous situation, especially doubles. I practice single loads because even a few milliseconds between trying to make sure you miss on a double load, on a double feed on your double, and you're dead,
Hmm.
right? You singles go in so much easier and so much faster. And many times in those bad situations, when you're up the creek without the paddle, 1 round is better than having a stumble and then you're crushed. So
Right.
you do the loads and the manipulations with 1 round in and coming up on there and practice that. It really will. That transition will make a big difference.
I I like that, and I kind of want to ask you a question that might tie in with this. So you'll have to help me with it. With your experience and the amount of hunts that you've been on, what are your feelings on the PH giving you instructions after you fired? We've all seen the YouTube videos where you see the client fire off a shot, and a lot of times you hear the PH saying, reload, 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 or stay on him, keep tracking, or put another one in him if you can. And you just hear this instructions coming. And I was never one to fire after the shot. I always like to tell the client beforehand, you're a capable hunter. This is the shot. If you feel comfortable in a second, take it. If not, I will say no or stop. And I was always very clear on just a simple instruction, and that's it. But for someone of your experience, if you're saying, do you talk to your PH beforehand and say, look, if I'm going to shoot him, I've practiced for a quick second follow up shot, or I'd rather just hold off and see where the animal goes and then follow up on it? What's kind of your arrangement or talking with the PH with that type of situations?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question, and I think it comes back to one big key factor, and that's communication.
Hmm.
The communication that you have prior, the communication you have at the range with your PH, being able to explain what you've done, not in a braggadocious way, but just so
Sure.
that PH knows this person's going to be a little different than the guy coming from wherever and has the 4 empties in his box Buzz showed me a picture, and literally there was a 500 and it was 4 empties, and that was the whole thing. So I would say the communications is critical at the beginning, just like you describe it. I do know why, and I was an elk and mule deer guide. Many times, fight flight cortisol dumps
Hmm.
in there,
Hmm.
and your clients start getting that fever, and they're not listening and they're not paying
Yes.
attention. It's like it's fight, freeze, or flop. But that flop could also mean inactivity, actually
Hmm.
doing nothing. And then the PH needs to drive home what needs to happen,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I think it's important that we tie that. But I'm going to tell you something. I just had a text with my mentor is Craig Boddington. I've been a fan of his since the late '70s. His first article, and I did a little post in Double Rifle Society about what a good PH does and how he listens, right, and the importance of listening. And he responded back to me on the post, and he said, the worst thing a guide can do is be yelling in my ear, reload, do that. Yeah. That stuff, when I'm trying to focus my energies into what I've trained myself to do, is extremely detracting. And I think he's absolutely right on that. I tell my PHs, do not yell in my ear. but I will tell them, I'm going to listen to you, but let's talk through this on the stalk up. There's certain people that do need to be, I've had a client on a sheep hunt on a big desert bighorn sheep, and he shot his first shot, and the ram took 3 steps and didn't move, and he was just vapor locked, and he was bending the trigger. He hadn't even bolted yet. He's just bending the trigger. Thought he had another round in there. And so I twisted his ear until he looked up at me and the pain hit him. And then I was like, put another round in,
Yeah.
but even then, your tone of voice, the human body is not good at people screaming in their ear.
Yeah.
It's really bad. And I've seen some really good PHs on videos do that. And I think it's a great call out. They don't need to be doing that. And you need to talk it through at the beginning, which for buffalo, if that buffalo's standing, you're shooting.
Yep.
And the PH better be moving around me, because I'm going to empty my gun until that thing is down and I hear a death bellow. And I even had on the Maharaja Mayhem, my PH was yelling, hold off, hold off, hold off. But I'm on him, and I know I have I'm safe behind. There's nothing behind where I'm shooting. I'm going to keep shooting. It just, that's just the way it is. But I think the communication is a great point. And and hopefully they're not screaming in your ear.
Yeah, no, fantastic answer. I appreciate that feedback. And I didn't mean to kind of derail and push off the topic there, but I just thought, with someone with your experience and what you charged with us, the last stories, I just always find it really intriguing to want to know what people speak with their PH beforehand. So yeah, great answer.
Yeah.
We can carry on.
Let me I'll wrap that one up with one. I had my uncle with me on a safari, back 25 years ago. And he's 77 years old, but really in great shape and could shoot well. And unfortunately, my PH decided to scream in his ear, and he wounded a zebra because of it. Here's a guy who could shoot, Coke cans at 100 yards offhand all day long. But that sound in his ear just totally detracted him, and he wounded it. And we never recovered that zebra.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then, of course, then I had my discussion with the PH, like, never do that again. Let's work together as a team, and let's talk through the shot if it's a problem.
What else have you got for us?
Yeah, so let's talk about ammunition a little bit. I think it's important as we're practicing and we're getting ready. It's the only thing attaching you to your game and to a lot of cost on these hunts. Make sure you're getting premium ammunition. Make sure you're not putting cheap ammo. If you want to shoot field practice, that's one thing. But man, the premium ammunition out there, I'm a big Barnes guy. I'm a big monolithic guy. I have been since they came out in the 90s. But Swift A-frames and North Fork, there's so many good premium bullets. It's worth it to spend the effort to get the right setup for your gun. And ammunition is the only thing that's going to keep you from having a really bad day.
Yeah, it's certainly not something you want to skimp on, especially when it comes to the dangerous game side of things. You know what? Plains game too. You might as well throw that in there too, because in Africa, when we say plains game, you're not talking about small little things. You're talking a lot of times your elands, your zebras, these big, hard, muscular animals, your wildebeest. I actually just did a video on my PH breakdown series where it was for a bushbuck, and guy shot the bushbuck and bushbuck reacted. But in the background, you just saw a puff of dust here, puff of dust here, puff of dust here. And that's the bullet just completely breaking up and disintegrating inside of it. And it just shows you, even on the small plains game animals, you're not going to go wrong with premium ammunition. Definitely not.
Yeah, and especially for a safari where you're spending a lot of money, and you pay the minute there's a drop of blood. It's not like a whitetail here, it runs up, but you're paying. And I'll tell you another thing too, and you know this better than anybody. When you think about African plains game, there's 6 or 7 premier plains game that are the size of our bull elk. So these are 6, 7, 800-pound animals, and not even including an eland at 1,500. Yeah. But you talk about, sable and kudu and gemsbuck and wildebeest. I mean, so roan, roan are 800, 900 pounds. And especially in South Africa, where they have a good feed source, they're even bigger than the wilder species. So why would you go with a whitetail gun? just, to me, in a whitetail setup with 150 grain bull and 30 cal, why would you do that when you know you're going on an elk hunt? I mean, you're really going to hunt something that's, every one of those animals are over 600 pounds. So it's just spend a little bit more, maybe go up and from a 150, maybe you go to a 180, right? You know, just pay attention to the ammunition you use, because boy, it's going to make a big difference at the end. I also want to talk about the importance of follow-up shooting, because even though I think people have gotten better at it and in their training, and the days of the observing your shot thing, and especially it was a lot of Americans that want to observe their first shot, and boy, one shot kill, that's garbage. It's garbage. You got to throw that out. You got to round, I mean, immediately shoot, get back on the animal, and you got to practice that in your dry fires. And if you do, once you're in the field and your adrenaline's going and your heart's up, like you said, you just climbed the top of a kopie, and you're at 115 beats a minute, it's ingrained in you. It's going to change how fast and how effective you move by having that dry fire practice with fast reloads.
Yeah, definitely. When I was PHing and I was looking at an animal with my binoculars, and the client was on getting ready to shoot, I was always trying to think, where's that animal running to? When it shoots, is it going to run down into a deep kloof or deep valley? And if so, do we need to get it down before it gets there? So a lot of the times when you're instructing your client, look, you need to put in a quick second shot, it may not necessarily be just for the fact that you want the animal down. It's because you are assessing the situation ahead and saying, there's a good chance if you don't get a good shot here, we could lose the animal, or it could go up over the hill or wherever it may be. So like you said, if you are well practiced in that second shot, it is going to save you a lot of time. And coming back to communication, sometimes when you're on like your 6th or your 7th day of the trip, you know how your client's shooting. You know if they can handle it. There's been many times where I've said to the guys, listen, you take that first shot, and then it's up to you. If you want to shoot again, you want to track it, go for it. Don't wait for me, because I know what you're capable of. And a lot of the times you see the guys that practice it and they know it, and they'll fire, and then pow, it's again, and that animal's down. And it saves a world of trouble and time and effort. So, yeah, practice, practice,
Yeah,
practice.
yeah. And you know what happens on the, and it doesn't matter if it's human threats or animal threats or animals in general, most of the bodies can handle one round. They can handle the turmoil of a fast projectile going through and run off. You put two in there, and now you have that whole shock wave of the temporary and stretch cavity. Now you put two in there, they're
Yeah,
gone.
great point. Great point.
So focus on the speed at which you do that. And one other thing I want to go back to before is that when you practice dry fire, practice as if you're hunting. Make sure you have your binos in the position, right? Make sure you have your belt in the right position. Make sure you have in a shirt that's appropriate. You don't want to be in flip-flops and, trying to do dry fire. You want to gear up so that gear is in there when you're practicing and there's no surprises. I had a friend that really lost. He missed the first shot on a huge 60-inch kudu, and his binos came up over the top, and when he came back in, it hit the back of the his butt pad, and he just couldn't get in the gun, and that thing went over the top of the hill and was gone. But I'll never forget it. Super wide, super monster, 3 big coils, 4 inches of ivory. It was one of the biggest, one of the most impressive animals I've ever seen in my life, and he missed because he just wasn't prepared and he wasn't practiced up. So that just, when you practice as if you're hunting. And that leads me to the next topic, which is you have to train our mind. You listen to pro athletes and they'll tell you all the time, it's from up here and above that wins and makes the pros and makes the great ones great. It's up here. And I really am very big on watching the videos in the field. Before I go on an outfitter's hunt, I'm going to ask you, if I'm going with you, I'm going to say, you send me your last couple of clients' videos, and I'll watch a 45-minute video that was professionally filmed and edited. And I'm going to learn about you. I'm going to learn about your style, but I'm also going to learn about my environment that I'm going to be in and the game that I'm going to be hunting. So I think it's really important that we visualize. And I do this all the time. I have my big screen up and I'm watching a charge and I'm going, where would I shoot? Where would I stop frame and I go, where would I shoot at that
Yeah.
point? That kind of information in the brain rewires our system so that when the cortisol hits it and it's trying to go from the front of the brain to the reptilian brain, we're focused on the proper technique, and that technique is now driven into behavior. And it's not just, I need to bring my gun up here, 1, 2, and 3. It's instant. There's the brain, I'm shooting. And that visualization
Mhm.
is extremely important. And there's I really like the Safari Classics. I have to throw a little plug in there because it's fantastic for people to,
Yeah.
to look at all those videos in one place at one time. Instead of hunting and pecking, I like to go to one place and look for it. But having the visual training in your routines is really, really important. Oh, and that brings up one other point: the importance of understanding where the vitals are on game.
Yeah.
So many people miss the African Plains game because they're not looking at exactly where that vital is. And so, this is, of course, this is the perfect shot by my friend Kevin Robinson. There is none better.
Yeah.
This is on the plane with me, and I'm literally, as many safaris as I've been on, I'm still going over this. Even just recently in October when I was there, I was looking at the leopard because I had baits and trees and we're, trying to get on a leopard, and I'm looking, okay, if the angle's over here, I know the branch comes up this way. If he turns this way, where am I going to aim? What rosette am I going to look at? But that's something that we can train our brain to do, and it's
Yeah.
easy. It's already done for you.
Because also, I've heard a lot of people that have said they have been surprised at either how big the animal was or how small the animal was. Because in Africa, you've got everything from the blue duiker up to your eland. There's a massive array in terms of animals. So to understand and know the anatomy, it kind of helps you get over that shock of, oh, I didn't realize how small the animal was, or I didn't realize how big that animal was. It kind of just narrows your focus onto what actually where you should be targeting on that animal. And it kind of doesn't catch you by surprise. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect. And I would say that if people remembered nothing else from our podcast, it's to remember and learn your anatomy so you can place the bullets in the right spot. And if you do that alone and you're on sticks, even if you minimize your training and you're not spending as much time dry firing, all of that, if you know where the vitals are and that first shot goes there, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have a good outcome.
Yeah, yeah. And how do you just to kind of touch on the mental aspects of things? How does someone prepare themselves to deal with failure? So, how does someone prepare themselves to deal with a missed shot or a wounding of an animal, and then you have to go and retrieve the animal the next day? We all know, we've all been there. It is the worst feeling. And I can promise you guys now, it is just as equally bad for the PH. We feel that pain too. But how does someone prepare for themselves to say, okay, I've wounded this animal. I have to get on. I have to refocus. What can people do to kind of practice for that? Because it will happen.
Yeah, Africa will get that, especially with as much game as we shoot. I had a couple of on this last one. As much as I practiced, I mean, I probably shot 100 rounds out of my 416. I probably shot 75, 80 rounds out of my doubles, and I had 2 misses on Impala. They were longer. They were 250, and I'm shooting a 416 with a 450 grain bullet. So it's got a pretty good drop. But I missed two animals, and so yeah, so it absolutely happens. I'll give you two examples, two professional different opinions, and it's affected me and how I think about that. The
Mhm.
first one is my Las Vegas, one of the greatest pitchers of all time, Greg Maddux, born and raised here in Vegas, and family members that know him. Greg said something that was interesting, and he said, you have to throw those misses out of your game. You have to, when it happens, you have to remember why you failed.
Mhm.
What did I do wrong? Try to evaluate what you did wrong, If you don't do that, then you're bound to have it happen again.
Yeah.
Evaluate what you did wrong. I was on the trigger. Crosshairs weren't on the game solid. I should have not shot that, or I cranked on the trigger. I just didn't feel good at the shot. Whatever it is, soon as you figure that out, you throw it out.
Yeah.
You've got to throw it out of your mind. And it starts with your practicing on the range. So you shoot at the range, and now you drop one. You have a flyer that's 4 inches out. You start right then and there and say, how did I? Oh, I know what it was. I didn't have the pad of my finger on there. I was in the joint space. That's what it was. Now I go back to the pad and I spend extra time squeeze the shot. So the Greg Maddux thing is, and most pitchers are this way. Most professional athletes, they make a mistake, they remember what they did wrong, they move on. And then there's his name just slips me for one. The guy that did the climbing El Capitan, the world champion, the freak climber.
Yep. Unbelievable stuff. Incredible guy. Yeah. I can't remember his name either, but unbelievable. Yeah. I've seen that documentary.
Unbelievable. And I've listened to him several of his podcasts. And his thing is, I don't have room for one failure.
That's a good point.
Okay. So here's two extremes, right? We have the world champion, one of the greatest pitchers of all time. I can't one failure and I'm dead. So what he said was, I rehearse every foothold, every foot, every position. I go over it in my head 100 times before I ever go there. And there we are with our dry fire. That's what dry fire does. And that's what visualization does. And that visualization, he said something at the end of the podcast that was very interesting. He said, I have confidence that's built on repetitive processes that goes, I every single move. I know where the hard parts are, but I avoid failure by making sure that I'm practiced and I build a visual and the mental acuity to handle that. So I think those are two things that can help with this. From a guide's perspective, when a client missed, I had several of them. One of the things I always do is I said, we're not done hunting.
There we go.
Right. The game's not over yet. The game is over when you're on your plane heading back. Until that point, you can make up for this. Baseball players do it all the time, right? They whiff at the plate, but man, they make a spectacular catch out in the field. So you have your chance to make up for it. And if you let the client know that, and your demeanor will determine how long that depression lasts. and one of the things that who was it that told me this? It was Vanner. It was at Chital Safaris in Limpopo. He said, I tell everybody, you're going to have a couple of screw ups.
Yeah.
Everyone. We're hunting 10, 12 animals, right? You're going to have some screw ups. If you put that in your mind now, it lessens the impact when it happens.
It's true. I always used to say to everybody, to my clients, if they missed or wounded an animal, as I said, I felt just as bad. As a PH, you assess yourself when you think, did I get them in the right spot? Was the sticks up properly for them? Maybe I shouldn't have told them to shoot. You also going through your mind. But I always used to tell them that next animal deserves your full attention and full focus. Like, you cannot be on the sticks looking through the scope at that animal thinking, man, that last animal, is it still okay? It doesn't work like that. You have to get it out of your mind. And I've got just a very quick story. I'll never forget this. I was hunting with a young lady. She was 16 years old. She came from, I think it was Washington State. Incredible young woman. She hunted like an absolute beast. But she missed a kudu. We sat on these hot rocks waiting for this kudu to move for 4 hours. We sat, all we could see was the tip of its horns, and we sat there waiting. And this kudu bull stepped out, and she clean missed it. And that bull went running up over the hill. And I looked across her, and she was absolutely devastated. And I said to her, what sport do you play? And she looked at me, and I've just missed a kudu. What do you want to know? And I said, what sport do you play? And she said, I do wrestling. And I said, okay, are you number one in your school? And she said, no, I'm number two. I said, okay, well, have you lost games before? And she said, oh, yeah, I've lost lots of games. And I said, have you won games before? And she said, yes. And I said, we've just lost a game. Now let's go win a game. And I think that little trigger for her, after that day, man, I felt like just giving her my binoculars and saying, you go hunt by yourself because you're on fire. But for enough, that was for her, just to have that little trigger of getting back into it and understanding you're gonna miss. I went to the next one. So yeah, it happens to everybody. You have to get over. But I really like your insights into it, and I've always been wondering how people prepare for that failure because it does come.
Yeah. I'll give you my quick story on mental preparation and how I know it saved my life on the Maharaja Mayhem, and a couple other dangerous situations, including a few two-legged ones. But the thing that I do is I talk to myself. So I Navy SEALs do this all the time. They talk through the process. If that buffalo comes around this tree, I'm putting as close to I can on the chin because his head's moving really a lot. I'm talking to myself, John, as he's coming.
Yep.
And so I'm just saying, here's coming here. Okay, and then as soon as I shoot and I see the leg go down, I knew I would not have time to come up and aim. So I
Right.
said to myself, I'm going to bolt. And as soon as I bolt, I'm just going to guide the rifle up to where I think the brain is, and I'm going to pull the trigger. I'm
Hmm.
talking to myself through the whole process. And it's the same thing I think a lot of people do. If you're not talking and clicking through and your brain is not figuring out and doesn't have the confidence to know that you're going to place the shot where you need to, the tendency, it's a 65% fight, flight, freeze, flop, right?
Hmm.
65% flop, freeze, or want to run. It's a much higher percentage of people that aren't going to fight their way out. Confidence and talking yourself through the process allows the body and the mind to say, I'm going to win this. I'm going to
Yeah.
come out alive on the other end. And now we're now spinning over to dangerous game. That process has to begin with the visualization training that I'm talking about. I watch every damn charge. I watch every and I don't quarterback it. I say, what would I do if I was that person?
Right.
And you have a cameraman that's only showing you one angle, so you most times you get it wrong. But I think to myself, what would I do in that situation?
Hmm.
And that training of the brain allows us to become we're going to be much more prepared when the bad stuff starts happening and the cortisol is dumping into the brain.
One of my favorite words is composure. I try to use composure in everything I do, whether it's work, whether it's hunting, whether it's trying to keep my composure to get the kids to finally bath and go to bed, whatever it may be. I always try and keep that composure. And there's a fantastic video of your elephant hunt. I think it's the one with you and Buzz. And when I watched that, and I could see the expression on your face and the way that Buzz handled it as a PH, and that elephant was that elephant was close, and I thought that is composure. Does that mental preparation that you just spoke about, did that kind of start to come through when you guys were that close? And because watching it for me, there was probably 10 times where I would have shot already, but you guys didn't. You were waiting for the right time, and then it just ended really, really well. Talk to us a little bit about what was going through your mind at that moment, and if that preparation you did really helped in that moment.
Oh God, it was all about preparation. And Buzz has a film on shot placement on elephant, and it goes one after another. Boom! You see the shot, you see the red dot, you see where the brain overlays it. I must have watched that thing 100 times, and so literally every shot, there was times when the trunk was way down, the head was up. There was times when you were looking up, side brained, all of that. That visualization of imagining the broomstick going through the brain, no matter where that head goes, the broomstick is always there. And I was shooting for the broomstick. So it was literally at that time, I was talking to myself saying, where's the broomstick? Because every time he came in another yard until he ended up at 9 yards, when he was at 9 yards, now the head was way up here. So I had to go way down on the trunk. I'm talking about halfway down on the trunk to be able to drive the bullet into the brain. And I said to myself two things. The one trophy bull, there was a 65-pounder in there, he left. So there was no other cows or anything else in there. So I just said, I'm going to pull both barrels. Right? I said it and I practiced with it. So I felt comfortable and I'm going to do both. But one thing I did do is I followed the broomstick. In my mind, I was telling myself nonstop, Where's the broomstick now? Where's the broomstick now? Oh, it's lower, it's lower, it's lower. And then when the shot went off, it was clean. But then you can look at my expression afterwards,
Yeah.
because then it was, it was a lifetime dream that finally happened, and all the emotion flooded in. I felt my knees getting weak. I was thinking, if I had to run at that point, I don't think I could have run.
Wait for him, wait for him, wait for him. No, wait till he comes for us and you can go. Yes, not a massive pull. That's why I want, if he comes for us, then it's awesome. But if not, we're going to let him go. He's an old bull. He's just not very big. He's got sunken in temples. Let's just wait and see what he does. Remember that distance, he can come quite fast. Okay. Yep. He doubled. Done like a professional. Safety on. Was that exciting or what?
Oh my God.
What a beautiful shot. Well done.
But you could very well tell that you'd prepared for it. And that's kind of what this whole episode is about. That preparation will come down to that fraction of a second.
Yeah, and Buzz actually said, he did say a couple of times that most of the people would have shot too high, because he was so close to us and we were down so low. Most people wouldn't have done that. But again, if you think about the broomstick and that imagination, and it's the same with buffalo, right? The buffalo coming down and the head's moving back and forth. What happens is that target and that brain of that elephant got a lot bigger at 9 yards than he was when he started at 20. So I think that's also, and that's a Mark Sullivan thing. Mark taught me that when he was my PH. He's like, the one thing that happens is it becomes easier to kill and find the brain when the brain's this big at 9 feet than it is when it's this tiny little size of an orange bobbing up and down coming in. And that's, again, just learning, listening,
Point. All right, let's carry on. I enjoy talking to you, and I keep feeling like I'm pulling us off the topics here, but you're gonna have to bring me back on, Julius.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much it. Those are my 13 points. In closing, I'll say that Africa is brutally honest with a sportsman, and it rewards for doing the work and putting the time in on safari, and it begins way before you get off that plane, and it punishes the unprepared. I mean, so many people, even when they're prepared, they can still get into trouble when there's multiple animals and all that. But you have to prepare, you have to put the time in. You got to solve the problems at home. You got to solve the problems with your gun and your ammunition and your scopes when you're at home. When you get there, you have confidence. It shows, your PH knows it, and you're going to have a much better time if you just put the training in. Just put step by step into it. You're going to be a lot better off, and it won't punish you as hard.
And what I'm noticing, and I'm actually going to a safari preparation meeting on Saturday, and I'm going to hopefully try and do a bit of a videos about it. But what I'm realizing is that through forums, through Facebook groups, through Double Rifle Society, like you guys doing fantastic work, is you kind of getting that more out there to people, especially when people are putting out reports and reviews and guys are saying, well, this is how I practice. These are the sticks I use. And that sharing of information is fantastic. I know I've often said this with my sort of limited amount of PHing that I've done. I love bringing on people like yourself and other PHs to share their experiences. I share my experiences because you never know, that little nugget that you're putting out there might just resonate with someone where they can think, I'm going to try that. It's a good idea. And then when they're out in the bush, they do what they've practiced. And that's ultimately what it's about. And you will have a lot more fun in Africa if you do put the preparation in. If not, oh, she will whip your butt.
Yeah, and you said something. I love the way you handled your 16-year-old client. To me, that's a great way. It's a very thoughtful way to get them thinking. Because the
Mhm.
first part is you got to get them thinking. They thought, oh yeah, I had failed. Okay, well now that failure, now we have the positive. Let's go on to that thought process. I love that chain of thinking. So again,
Mhm.
you learn something, all the time. And one thing that I find is, back a little bit back up on previous stuff is I love shooting with my friends.
Yeah.
I love shooting big boards with my friends. I have my friends hand me a rifle, my rifle, and I don't know if it's loaded, right? This is a mental preparation thing because now every time they hand me that rifle, I better damn sure squeeze that trigger, and I better not be leaning on the trigger,
Mhm.
right? I better not be slapping it because I'm going to miss the target. I'm going to get embarrassed. And we also shoot against each other. And I've sent you a couple of videos. We do it
Yep.
all the time. So, bolt against double gun. Let's see who can get 4 rounds into the target and have the best group at 30 yards. That makes this whole process fun. Shooting on your own is kind of boring, but you bring your friend, you bring a good friend into it. My grandkids love to shoot now, so they're behind me going, "Come on, Pop, go for it. Let's see if you can do that." 100 yards. Graham Wright shooting these competitions. They offhand shoot big bore rifles and shoot 3-inch groups offhand all day long at 100 yards. And to me, that amazes me, right? How do you
Mhm.
get that good? Because they practice all the time. So having that practice, having that competition, because I don't think there's anything we can do when we do the live fire, the importance of live fire, when you have somebody with you,
Yeah.
because it's going to give you that anxiety. And if you can handle that, that's probably the closest that you can get to in the field. So again, just more learning. And I can tell you this is a fact. Every shot I do, and I tell people all the time, no more than 12 to 15 rounds on big bore.
Mhm.
Shut it down after that. You're going to get the flinches. Stop, pay attention, make sure your live fire is specific. But I try to visualize every shot and try to remember, and I try to learn even from shot to shot. What did I do wrong? On express sights, the missing, instead of looking at the whole front bead, you should be looking at just the top 1/3 of the bead. That's what's in clear focus. The back sight is blurry, the target is blurry, but that sight focused on bringing the express sight on up makes a huge difference. So little things like that, trying to remember shot to shot and shooting a group, and the importance of shooting a group can make a huge difference.
You sent me a fantastic video of Graham Wright handling a double,
Oh yeah.
and the tips and the way he was talking about it and his posture and technique. And after that video, I thought, wow, that was an eye opener for me. I have limited
You,
experience with doubles, but
me
watching
too.
that, I just thought that is something you can learn from just watching that video. It was incredible.
We're going to do a whole series on that on Double Rifle Society. We're going to do a series
Oh,
on it.
good.
Yeah, Graham is probably the greatest big bore shot of our day, and I don't say that lightly. 41 years, he shoots competitions every month. He's taken 3 world championships. He's been 11 times Australian champion. That guy has never placed more than third in any competition in 41 years. And they shoot offhand. They shoot 60 rounds. It's almost all offhand. And they'll shoot 100, 50, 25. And the only thing they do is they'll do a sitting position for one of them. To shoot those, and the winning groups are 2 to 3 inches at offhand in those big bores. I mean, that is dedication. He's to me, he's one of the best shots alive today. And so we got some nice videos. Hopefully you can play that. There's some good tricks and tips in there. I learned 3 or 4 things just with my camera going,
Mhm.
wow, why didn't I think of that? Especially his feet placement. I have a tendency to want to lean too far forward on the gun. And he's like,
Mhm.
no, when you do that, you're stressing out other areas, other muscle groups, and it's going to detract from your accuracy. Come back into a natural
Interesting.
position, make sure the gun is up high, all those things.
Yeah, interesting. I'll definitely try and insert some of those into this episode and even put links down below if anybody wants to click on it. But
One thing Julius has asked me to cover is shooting form, a few of the techniques we use in competition. And the double rifles are mostly rapid fire, so it's a good thing to cover. So I'm probably about 30 degrees off if I'm shooting this way to the target, probably about 30 degrees off. My left foot is slightly angled, but not too much, and my right foot is back, but my weight is relatively evenly over my legs, or over the feet, and probably just a little bit more on the left leg. So as far as stance go, I have a fairly forward grip on the barrels. Normally I do have a glove on only because the barrels get hot, and I tend to have my index finger pointing at the target, a little bit like clay target shooting, and just holding the forend, not too tight, not exaggerated grip around the barrels, just a comfortable grip, finger pointing forward. That's all you really need. And it's the left hand that is the one that's lining up. It's doing the work. The right hand really is just guiding into the shoulder and then releasing the trigger for you. So yeah, get a good cheek, butt to cheek contact here, so you don't want the rifle accelerating into your face, particularly on heavy recoiling doubles. So it's a reasonably firm grip, and the face down on the stock, both eyes open, and particularly with the reflex sight, it's both eyes open. You can see the red dot, holding on the target and releasing the trigger. The other thing I do is it's like a pistol shooting. I try to use the very front of the finger on the trigger, so you get a good trigger control and you get a good trigger release. Even with these rifles here, and this is which one's this, Julius? This is
The 450.
450. The recoil's not that bad, so there's no reason to have some sort of an exaggerated stance out like this. There's just no point. It's just a fairly upright stand, slight weight over the left leg, and fire.
Yeah, head on over to the Double Rifle Society, because you guys are really putting out some fantastic info, and just the people in the group there sharing their knowledge makes a massive difference. And I can even see sometimes other PHs, chiming in and learning from it too. So the wealth of knowledge is incredible.
Yeah, that's great, brother. And I've had a good discussion. Hopefully people can take little parts of it. And again, it's hard to put all of it together, but you take little pieces of it, and hopefully they'll have a better adventure. And I appreciate the opportunity for coming on board tonight.
Yeah, well, I think we've kind of just scratched the surface here, and I know that you got plans to kind of really dive in deep on it. So I encourage anybody listening to this, follow Julius, follow Double Rifle Society. Anybody that is planning their first trip to Africa, it's going to help you guys an absolute ton. I'll put all the information down below. But Julius,
and Hunt Africa too. Hunt Africa is my other. I'm a moderator on Hunt Africa. That's a broader sense, more around South Africa, but Africa in general. So Hunt Africa is another great site. They actually do more for people going to Africa, travel, education, knowledge. Bill Davis does an amazing job with that group. 20,000 people in there. Take a look at that. Learn the best you can, and I really enjoyed our chat.
Yeah, Bill's a great guy. I've had him on the podcast, I think, twice. And again, do a phenomenal job, share information. Just reach out and ask questions. We're all hunters. We all want everybody else to have a good time. We're all here to help each other. But Julius, man, once again, thank you so much. I would invite you back on for another episode, but then I feel like you're just going to be a co-host. So I might have to give you a little bit more time before you come back on for some more episodes. But thank you, man, so much for sharing your knowledge. I really do appreciate it. And yeah, wish you nothing but the best.
Yeah. Cheers, mate.